I used to think that family was the warmest place, but I was wrong and learned a bitter lesson. Not every child in the family is treated fairly. Hello, I'm Jessica, 32 years old. I have always been a stranger in my own home. Ever since childhood, I realized I was nothing like Marcus, my younger brother, 2 years younger than me, the family's golden child. While I learned to be independent from a young age, Marcus grew up wrapped in absolute protection and indulgence. My parents were a typical middle-class family, not too wealthy, but not struggling either. They had the means to support both of their children, yet they poured all their expectations, love, and attention into just one, Marcus. If Marcus wanted something, my parents would do whatever it took to get it for him. If I wanted something, they would find a reason to say no. When I was 6, I received a teddy bear for Christmas. I loved it dearly and hugged it every night before bed. But Marcus cried and begged my mother for one just like it when he saw it. Without a second thought, she snatched the bear from my hands and gave it to him. I burst into tears, but all she said was, "Jessica, you're the older sister. You have to let your brother have it." At 12, I had a piano recital. After months of hard practice, I eagerly looked forward to seeing my parents in the audience, but they never showed up. The reason? Marcus had a mild cold, and they thought taking him to the doctor was more important than watching me perform. At 14, I won a state-level science award, but no one in my family mentioned it. That same day, Marcus scored a goal in his school soccer game. I don't have to say it. You already know who got a celebration party. I tried. I hoped. But the older I got, the more I realized that no matter how well I did, they would never be as proud of me as Marcus. And then something happened when I was 18 that changed my life forever. After graduating high school, I received a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university. I held the acceptance letter in my hands, hoping just for once to see a hint of pride in my parents' eyes. But my mother only sighed, her voice hesitant. "Jessica, are you sure you want to go that far away for school? Our family isn't well off, and if you leave, who will help your father and me?" I didn't fully grasp her meaning until my father spoke. "Marcus will be going to college in 2 years, and his tuition will be expensive. We can't afford to support both of you." I froze. "But I have a scholarship. My tuition is already covered." My mother shook her head. "That's just tuition, Jessica. What about living expenses, housing, food? Do you know how expensive it is to be a student living away from home?" And just like that, everything inside me shattered. They were willing to cover everything for Marcus. But for me, just a few thousand a year for basic expenses, and they refused. Summoning every ounce of courage, I looked my parents straight in the eyes, my voice calm but firm. "I'll take care of myself. My scholarship includes living expenses. If I need more, I'll get a part-time job. I won't ask for your money, and I won't be a burden to anyone." Silence filled the room. My mother glanced at my father as if waiting for him to protest, but he only sighed, crossing his arms. "Do whatever you want." His voice was flat, devoid of pride or encouragement. My mother nodded as well, her expression indifferent, as if this was nothing worth discussing. "If that is your choice, I won't stop you." No congratulations, no words of encouragement. There was no sadness that their daughter was about to leave home and embark on an entirely new journey, just cold, unsettling indifference. And so the next day, I officially stepped into my new life of independence. When I stepped into college, I knew I couldn't rely on anyone but myself. I chose to live in a dorm to save money, not because I liked the cramped space, but because I knew every dollar I had mattered. I majored in real estate, a highly competitive but opportunity-filled field. I didn't choose it out of passion. I chose it because I knew it was the fastest way to make money. Someone like me, who had nothing, couldn't afford to sit around waiting for a dream. I needed a practical plan. Through a school referral, I landed a part-time job at a brokerage firm. The starting wage was only $15 an hour, but I would earn a commission if I helped sell or lease a property. I threw myself into work like a moth to a flame. I had no connections, experience, or reputation, but I had one thing no one could beat: perseverance. While other students spent their free time hanging out or enjoying their youth, I spent every spare moment studying the market. I learned how to talk to clients, assess a property's potential, and understand buyer psychology. I observed the senior agents in the firm, memorizing every word they said and every technique they used to persuade customers. The first time I closed a rental deal, the feeling was incredible. When I received my first commission, $2,200, I stared at my bank account for a long time. I had earned a significant amount of money through my ability for the first time. With the income from my part-time job, I could support myself without worrying about living expenses. I learned to manage my finances, cut unnecessary costs, and save every dollar. I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to build a solid foundation for my future. Occasionally, my parents would call to check in, but I knew their questions were routine. They didn't honestly care about how I was living or whether I was struggling. "Are you doing okay? Still keeping up with school? Marcus has been busy lately. He is working hard too, you know." I always responded briefly, "Yes, I'm fine." They never asked anything more. They had no idea what I was doing and no interest in whether I was succeeding or not, and I no longer felt the need to tell them. After graduating, I built over 3 years of experience as a broker and developed a solid client network. There was no time for celebration or relaxation. I dove straight into work, using every skill I had learned to make money. I kept selling and leasing properties, accumulating commission after commission. But I didn't want to be just a broker forever. I didn't want to work for someone else. I wanted to own real estate myself. 2 years after graduation, I bought my first house for $500,000. I paid $300,000 up front and took out a loan for the rest. It wasn't an easy decision. I spent weeks thinking it over, calculating every number, weighing every risk, but I knew it was a necessary step. I had officially become the owner of a real asset. No one in my family knew about it. I kept it a secret. I felt no need to share this achievement with them, and that was probably the best decision I had ever made. After buying my first house, I didn't stop. I kept pushing forward, working, investing, and expanding. Within 5 years, I owned several apartments and commercial properties, and even started venturing into the hotel market. By the age of 28, I had almost everything. And Marcus, my younger brother? After graduating, he bounced from job to job, never staying anywhere for more than 6 months. He failed repeatedly, over and over again. But my parents never blamed him. They always had an excuse to defend him. "Marcus just hasn't found the right job yet. That company didn't know how to recognize real talent. He's still young. He has the right to experiment." They never held Marcus accountable for his failures. I never intended for my family to know the truth about my life, but some things eventually come to light no matter how hard you try to hide. 2 years ago, one evening, I went back to my parents' house for dinner after receiving a simple message from my mother. "Are you free tomorrow night? Come home for dinner." No greeting, no questions about how I was doing, just a straightforward request, as if I were nothing more than a distant acquaintance. I considered refusing, but then I hesitated. It had been a long time since I last visited. It could be a regular gathering. Maybe, for once, they genuinely wanted to check in on me. I arrived at 7 p.m. The house was the same. The atmosphere was the same. The way they looked at me, like I had never left, was the same. Dinner went as usual, filled with conversations about Marcus. Marcus is trying out a new job. Marcus is thinking about starting a business. Marcus just needs a little more time to get settled. I nodded, saying nothing. I was used to this. But then, a simple accident changed everything. While I was in the kitchen getting some water, my phone, left on the dining table, let out a soft ding. I didn't pay attention, but Marcus did. "You got a message. Is it from your boyfriend? Let me check." My phone was set to display notification previews on the lock screen, so Marcus could immediately see what it was. I turned around just as he picked it up, his curious expression shifting to shock. I stepped closer, but it was too late. He held up my phone and read the email notification aloud. "Contract confirmation for the acquisition of Hillside Retreat Resort. Total value, $15,200. The entire room fell silent after Marcus spoke. My mother blinked rapidly, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. My father set his chopsticks down and stared at me. Marcus let out a dry laugh, crossing his arms as he placed my phone back on the table. "Are you kidding me? 15 million? Hillside Retreat Resort?" No one said a word for several seconds. Calmly, I picked up my phone, turned off the screen, and looked around the table. I could see it all in their eyes. Shock, disbelief, and even a hint of anger. "Jessica," my mother finally spoke, her voice weak. "Is this for real?" I placed my phone back down, took a slow breath, and nodded. "Yes, I just acquired a small resort." Where did you get $15 million? My father's tone was sharp, as if I had committed a crime. I pressed my lips together. I knew what the next question would be. And of course, it came from Marcus in that familiar voice. How long have you been hiding this from us? The room fell into silence again. The only sounds were the clinking of utensils against plates and the indifferent ticking of the wall clock. Resting my hands on the table, I spoke slowly. I wasn't hiding it. It's just no one ever asked. After my response, the room fell silent once again. No one talked about dinner or the usual family topics anymore. They stared at me as if I were a stranger who had just walked into their home. 5 minutes later, my mother was the first to speak, her voice softer than ever, as if she were trying to soothe a child. Jessica, I never imagined you'd be this successful. I always thought you just had a regular office job. I said nothing, just looked at her quietly. She reached for my hand, gently patting it, a gesture I couldn't even remember the last time she had done. My daughter is so talented, but you've never shared any of this with the family. If you had told us sooner, we could have helped you manage your life better. I slyly pulled my hand away and responded calmly. I can handle it myself. My mother said nothing. She smiled knowingly before turning to my father. What do you think about moving to a new house? This place is getting cramped. Now that our daughter is well off, it's only right to upgrade to something more fitting for her status. My father took a sip of his wine, nodding in agreement. Yeah, I think so too. There's a beautiful suburban estate, spacious, with a garden. A little over $2 million, but that shouldn't be a problem for Jessica. I set my glass down on the table, my tone still calm. $2 million? My mother smiled, her eyes filled with expectation. That's right. A bigger, more comfortable home, with rooms for everyone. If we have guests over, we'd finally have a proper space to entertain them. Isn't this current house way too small now? I tilted my head slightly, watching her expression. You want me to buy a house for the whole family? She quickly corrected me, her voice smooth and calculated. Not buy, invest. The house would still be in your name, but we'd all live together. You're the most successful in the family, so it makes sense for you to help a little, right? I let out a small, humorless laugh. Her speech sounded like a business pitch, as if she were trying to convince me to invest in some high-potential venture. Before I could respond, Marcus spoke up, his voice calm but filled with anticipation. Have you ever thought about investing in a different industry? I turned to look at him. He was still leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, as if he had been expecting this conversation all along. I raised an eyebrow. What industry? He smirked, tapping his fingers on the table. Startups. I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. Adjusting his posture, he met my gaze with unwavering confidence. I have a highly promising business idea. All I need is some initial capital to build a sustainable company. I need about $5 million. I blinked. $5 million? Marcus nodded, completely serious. That's right. You have money. You could help speed up the process. If I had to build everything from scratch, it would take me years to reach my goals. But with your investment now, I could achieve success much faster. Leaning back in my chair, I crossed my arms. What kind of business needs $5 million? You're talking like it's just 50 grand. Marcus frowned, as if my question was unnecessary. A startup, of course. Technology, market research, finance. There are many directions to take. You don't need to worry about the details. No, I have everything planned. I smirked. So basically you have nothing, just an idea in your head. His brows furrowed, clearly irritated. You don't trust me. This is a huge opportunity. I'm your brother. What's wrong with helping me out a little? I let out a quiet laugh, but inside I felt nothing but emptiness. I had heard this story my entire childhood. My mother shook her head, her patience wearing thin. Jessica, you're being selfish. Your family needs you, yet you're calculating every dollar with your brother. My father pushed harder. This isn't a big deal, Jessica. With your wealth, a few $100,000 is nothing. I looked at them, then at Marcus. If it's nothing, then why don't you cover it yourselves? Marcus threw up his hands in frustration. Because I don't want to spend my entire life saving up pennies. If I had startup capital, I could multiply it tenfold. I nodded, as if finally understanding something. Ah, so you just want a shortcut. Marcus clenched his jaw. It's not a shortcut. I want a fair opportunity. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because I had heard this line 1,000 times before. My mother's voice grew sharper. Jessica, you're being unreasonable. Helping your brother isn't too much to ask. $5 million is a lot, but you could at least invest a few $100,000. My father sighed heavily. We're not asking for much, just a little help. You can't only think about yourself. I placed my hands on the table, speaking slowly and clearly. You're right. You've never asked me for anything. They stared at me, waiting for my following words. I gave them a faint smile. Because you've always believed I was obligated to give. The room grew unbearably tense. I stood up, pushing my chair back into place. I think I should go. Marcus shot up, his voice rising. You can't just walk away. Have you ever even thought about this family? I met his gaze directly. Has this family ever thought about me? No one answered. I stepped toward the dining room door, but just before leaving, I turned back for one last look. You always call me selfish, I said quietly. But have you ever stopped to ask yourselves who the real selfish ones in this family are? I thought that after dinner, and after I walked out of that house, they would finally let me go. But I was too naive. They weren't just greedy. They were more cunning and ruthless than I ever imagined. A year passed. The calls and messages from my parents became less frequent. I assumed they had finally accepted that I wasn't their ATM, but in truth, they had another plan. Without telling me, they secretly took out a mortgage on their house and used the money to fund Marcus's startup. No one said a word to me about it. I only found out when it was already too late. I found out about it a year ago. That day, I was sitting in my office, deep into researching a major project, when my phone suddenly vibrated. I glanced at the screen. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before picking up. Since that dinner, my family and I had rarely spoken. My mother never called unless it was something serious. Bringing the phone to my ear, I kept my voice calm. What is it, Mom? On the other end, I heard a long, heavy sigh. I immediately recognized that tone. Someone trying to evoke sympathy. Jessica, we're about to lose the house. I froze, my brows furrowing slightly. Lose the house? What do you mean? She let out a shaky sob, her voice filled with distress. Your father and we took out a mortgage, and now the bank says they'll seize the house if we don't pay it back. I straightened in my chair, unease creeping up my spine. You mortgaged the house? I enunciated each word carefully. Why? There was a brief silence on the line, as if she were scrambling to come up with a reasonable explanation. Finally, she spoke, her voice hesitant and low. Your father and we have a friend. They invited us to invest in a restaurant. They said it was a great opportunity. I frowned. You mortgaged the house to invest in a restaurant? She quickly tried to justify it. They guaranteed it would be profitable. We only needed to contribute a small portion, but things didn't go as planned. The business didn't do well. I clenched the phone tighter. How much did you take out? Another pause. Then she answered quickly, hoping I would miss the number. 300,000. I couldn't believe my ears. 300,000? I repeated, forcing myself to stay calm. She broke into sobs. Jessica, please, if we can't pay it back, we'll lose everything. We have nowhere else to go. Can you help us? It's just 300,000. I'm begging you. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. You want me to lend you 300,000 to save the house? She quickly nodded, her voice brimming with desperate hope. Yes, just a loan. I promise we'll pay you back when we have the money. I opened my eyes, staring out the window, my mind completely blank. I could help them. With my financial situation, 300,000 wasn't a huge amount. I could wire the money tomorrow and the problem would be solved, but something didn't feel right. I couldn't just take their word for it. I needed time to think. Keeping my voice steady, I spoke slowly. I'll think about it. My mother panicked immediately, her voice rising in urgency. Jessica, we don't have much time. The bank has already sent a notice. If you don't help, we'll lose our home. I tightened my grip on the phone, but my tone remained firm. I understand, but I still need time to think. Before she could say anything else, I ended the call. After ending the call with my mother, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Without hesitation, I picked up my phone and called Ryan, one of my closest friends and a financial expert I trusted completely. He was brilliant at financial analysis and could dig into real estate transactions faster than anyone I knew. The call barely rang before his voice came through. Jessica, what's going on? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Ryan, I need you to check on my parents' house. They say the bank is about to seize it, but something doesn't feel right. I need the full financial history on it. There was a brief pause before Ryan responded, firm and confident. Got it. I'll look into it right away. Give me a minute. When night had fallen, Ryan called me back a few hours later. I answered immediately. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He got straight to the point. Jessica, you were right. The house was mortgaged for a $300,000 loan. I tightened my grip on the phone, but before I could respond, he continued, "But there is a big problem." I frowned. "What is it?" Ryan took a breath, then spoke slowly. "Your parents aren't the ones listed on the mortgage. The person who signed the loan is Marcus." I froze for a moment. I wasn't sure if I had misheard. "What did you just say?" Ryan repeated, even more precisely this time. "Marcus is the legal owner of the house. The loan is in his name." I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Why was Marcus the owner? When did my parents transfer the house to him? Ryan hesitated for a second before sighing. "It's been a year, Jessica. Your parents transferred full ownership to Marcus a year ago." A cold chill ran down my spine. They had planned this from the start. Right after learning I had tens of millions in my accounts, they thought I couldn't just walk away. By putting the house under Marcus's name, I had no doubts anymore. This wasn't a desperate mistake. This was a calculated move. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Ryan, I need your help. By tomorrow morning, I want every single document related to this." He responded immediately. "Got it. I'll send you everything." I ended the call, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the wall before me. I knew exactly what I had to do next. The following day, I drove to my parents' house at 8:00 a.m. The sun had yet to rise fully, and the neighborhood was quiet. I wasn't in a hurry, but my mind was set. This would be the final confrontation. My mother was the first to see me as I entered the yard. She froze for a second, then her face lit up instantly. "Jessica, you're here!" My father had just left the house with a cup of coffee. When he saw me, he raised an eyebrow, but just like my mother, his expression quickly shifted to delight. My mother hurried toward me, her voice filled with hope. "You've thought it over, haven't you? You're going to help us, right?" I didn't answer right away. I stood still, letting my gaze sweep over each member of my family. My father was calm and composed, as if he was already sure I would fulfill my duty as the obedient daughter. Marcus sat on the living room couch, unnervingly relaxed, as if this had never been his problem. I stepped inside, set the documents folder on the glass coffee table, and pulled out a chair. "We need to talk." My parents looked at each other before sitting down across from me. My mother smiled gently, as if I was making things difficult before inevitably agreeing. I opened my bag, took a copy of the mortgage documents, and placed them on the table. "You told me the bank is about to take the house, but in reality, this house was mortgaged a year ago, and you transferred it to Marcus before taking out a $300,000 loan." My mother's smile froze. I continued, my voice calm but ice cold. "You weren't forced into this like you claimed. You willingly handed the property to Marcus so he could take out the loan. You told me a friend convinced you to invest in a restaurant. But the truth is, you never invested in anything. You gave all the money to Marcus." The air in the room turned frigid in an instant. My mother stiffened, her face slowly losing color. My father gripped the armrest of his chair tightly, while Marcus remained completely unfazed, as if none of this had anything to do with him. My mother swallowed hard, trying to regain her composure. "Jessica, that doesn't matter anymore. What matters now is that we need money to keep the house." I smirked. "So you lied to me. You thought if I believed you were forced into losing the house, I'd hand over the money without question." My father cleared his throat, his patience wearing thin. "Jessica, you're blowing this out of proportion. The money is already gone. What's important now is whether you will help your family." I leaned forward, elbows on the table, and met their eyes. "No. What's important is that you lied to me." My mother blinked repeatedly, as if she couldn't believe I had just said that. Marcus let out a dry chuckle, crossing his arms. "So what? You can still help." I turned to him, my eyes filled with disdain. "Marcus, this is your problem. You took out the loan, spent all the money, and now you're waiting for me to clean up your mess." He shrugged, completely unbothered. "You can help. You have tens of millions of dollars. 300,000 is nothing to you." My mother nodded eagerly. "That's right, Jessica. You can help. Family is supposed to support each other, isn't it?" I let out a short, humorless laugh and crossed my arms. Family? Where was my family when I had to pay for my college tuition? When I worked to exhaustion to buy my first house? Did either of you ever ask me how I was doing? Did you care when I built my career from the ground up? My father clenched his jaw, his voice growing colder. "Jessica, you're being selfish." My mother quickly jumped in. "You have millions and refuse to give your parents just $300,000. Do you even have a conscience?" I didn't blink. I didn't look away. If it's such a small amount, then why don't you make it yourselves? My mother opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. I looked at them one by one, these people who were once my family, but were now nothing more than strangers filled with greed. I took a deep breath, then spoke slowly. If you agree to sell this house to me, I'll consider buying it and letting you stay. My mother's face went blank, as if she couldn't process what I had just said. My father scowled, his expression darkening. Marcus shot up from his seat, staring at me in shock. For the first time, he was speechless. I continued, my voice as steady as ever. If you just need a place to live, I'll handle it the most practical way. But don't waste your time if you think I'll keep letting you take advantage of me. My father's knuckles turned white as his grip tightened. Then suddenly, he grabbed the glass on the table and hurled it to the floor. The sharp sound of shattering glass echoed throughout the room. He shot up from his chair, his face burning red with fury, and roared, "I have no daughter like you! Get out!" My mother gasped, staring at him in shock. Marcus remained frozen, but I saw genuine disbelief in his eyes for the first time. I looked at my father, my expression empty. No anger, no disappointment, no pain. Just a terrifying void. I turned around and walked toward the door. I didn't look back this time. The door closed for good. They had put themselves in the situation, and this time I wasn't coming back to save them. I thought that after that confrontation it was over. I had allowed them to keep the house, but they chose not to take it. From then on, I didn't call, text, or bother to find out how they managed. It was no longer my problem. But then, a week later, I received a notification from my lawyer. I glanced at the email in my inbox, the subject line so clear that I couldn't believe my eyes. Lawsuit for parental support. I opened it and read my parents' legal complaint in court. They had sued me. They were demanding that I provide them with monthly financial support because I was their biological daughter and they had sacrificed so much to raise me. They accused me of being ungrateful and irresponsible, of abandoning them in need. They even claimed they had no home, no steady income, and that I, their daughter, was legally obligated to care for them for the rest of their lives. I smirked, a cold, humorless smile. Had they gone this far? I used to think their greed had limits. I was wrong. They didn't just want to ask for my money. They wanted to force me to pay for their mistakes using the law. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's number, my voice calm but sharper than ever. They want a legal battle? Fine. I'll teach them a lesson they won't forget. It didn't take me long to prepare for the trial. My parents might have thought they had a chance to win and that the legal system could force me to take financial responsibility for them, but they forgot one crucial thing. I was no longer the girl they controlled when I was 18. On the day of the hearing, I arrived on time, stepping into the courtroom with absolute composure. My parents were already seated on the plaintiff's side. My mother looked more worn out than before, her face twisted in resentment and grief. My father sat upright, his gaze cold and rigid. I felt nothing anymore. No anger, no disappointment, no pain. Just an overwhelming sense of disgust. Their lawyer opened with a dramatic, emotion-filled speech. They painted my parents as helpless, aging victims with nowhere to turn. Parents who had sacrificed their entire lives to raise me, only to be abandoned in their time of greatest need. They emphasized that I was financially well off, and that with my wealth, providing them with $5,000 a month in support was nothing but a trivial amount. $5,000 a month. Even now, they were still trying to milk me for money. What did they plan to do? Use it for vacations? They tried to play on the court's emotions, desperately crafting an image of me as a cruel, ungrateful daughter who had heartlessly discarded her parents when they had nothing left. After their presentation, my lawyer stood up and calmly laid out the facts. My parents had voluntarily mortgaged their house. They had transferred ownership to Marcus a year ago, with signed documents to prove it. Despite having 2 children, they chose to hand everything to only one. The $300,000 loan was taken out under Marcus's name. It had nothing to do with me. Since leaving home at 18, I had never received a single cent of financial support from them. Legally, I owed them nothing. After my lawyer's statement, the judge reviewed the documents and turned to my parents. His voice was firm, unwavering. There is insufficient legal basis to require the defendant to provide financial support to the plaintiffs. This lawsuit has no legal standing. Case dismissed. Just one sentence, but it struck my parents like a thunderclap. I looked at them. My mother's face went pale, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. My father clenched his fists, his expression dark and rigid. And Marcus, the one who had always remained indifferent, for the first time I saw unmistakable panic in his eyes. They had gambled on using the law to force my hand, and they had lost miserably. As the trial ended, I stood up and walked toward them, meeting each of their eyes individually. Lowering my voice, I spoke slowly. This is the last time we will ever see each other. I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. My mother gasped, tears streaming down her face. Jessica, you can't just abandon us like this. I smirked, but this time no bitterness remained in my smile. You abandoned me a long time ago. I turned and left behind the people who had lost everything, not just money, but the only child they ever had. A year passed, and I never heard from them again. No more demanding phone calls, no more guilt-tripping messages, no more lies wrapped in the illusion of family love. I had expected them to come back one day, to make up another sob story to get money from me. But they didn't. They disappeared, as if they had never existed in my life at all. My best friend Ryan was the last to give me any information about them. One evening, as we sat drinking coffee after work, he suddenly spoke up. I heard a little something about your parents. I set my cup down and looked at him. Where are they? Ryan shook his head. No one knows. After the bank repossessed the house, they left, and no one has seen them since. I sat in silence for a few seconds, but I felt nothing. None of the relatives know where they are? I asked. Ryan shrugged. If they do, they're not telling you, because right now your relatives are calling you heartless. I let out a dry chuckle, unsurprised. Let me guess. They're saying I have tens of millions, yet I refuse to spend a mere $300,000 to buy back the house for my parents, and now no one knows if they're even alive. Ryan nodded. Something like that. I leaned back in my chair, gazing out the window. The city was still alive, lights twinkling on the towering skyscrapers. In the past year, I had expanded my business, achieving more success, and I had no regrets. I didn't care what my relatives thought. I didn't care about their judgmental stares, because not a single one of them had been there when I had to fend for myself at 18. Not one checked on me when I had to work 3 jobs to survive. None of them reached out when I scraped together every penny to buy my first home. So why should I care about their opinions now? And you, what do you think of my story? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you go back and help a family that used you for years? Or would you do what I did, cut ties entirely and move forward? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Goodbye and see you next time. Thank you for watching.